Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome. So excited to have you all here today. I see the chat is going. We love that energy and let's keep it up. My name is Deborah Sharmaluz. I am producing this workshop on behalf of Most Diverse Tech Hub and Technically, and I'm so excited to welcome Alyssa here today so we can discuss how to create culturally inclusive job descriptions for our organizations. If you're answering the questions, feel free to keep answering them in the chat. We would love to encourage conversation during this workshop. This isn't a one-sided presentation. We're here to listen from each other and learn from one another. If you were here last month, you learned a little bit about how to create a culture of belonging, and we're hoping to keep that energy going throughout the year for this workshop. So just a little bit of backdrop before we get into the meat and potatoes of everything. What is the Most Diverse Tech Hub? Well, I'm so glad that you asked. The Most Diverse Tech Hub is a program that the City of Philadelphia's Department of Commerce is running in conjunction with a few other key partners. Technically was one of those partners, and as a part of our work for the Most Diverse Tech Hub, we are producing these workshops that are focused on DEI in tech. What can we do to get more Black and Brown people, not only in tech, but thriving in tech? We're excited to examine each and every aspect of it. We know that these topics are grand and there's no way we could cover it all, but we're hoping to chip away at just a little bit of it through these workshops. Now, to just get into it, I am so excited to introduce Alyssa Vásquez, who comes from us from Cultured Enuf. I'll let her speak a little bit to the work that she's done and the topic that we're going to tackle today. So Alyssa, if you don't mind taking it over.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Deborah. I appreciate it. It's actually Alyssa, but I'll let that be known before we get into it. I'm loving the chat as well. Oh, hi, Chris. How's it going? Being able to speak on this topic, especially as a woman of color, Cultured Enuf has been around for about the last, I want to say, six to 5 years. And we have two sides to our company. One is conducting organizational assessments, being able to collect qualitative and quantitative data for your organization to get a baseline, bottom line of what DEI is within your organization. Is it represented in your core foundational documents? Are you being able to evaluate all your processes so that it does produce accessibility to everyone within your organization, as well as measuring the culture of belonging through climate surveys? So being able to grasp that through our Cultured Enuf aspect. And then we have an Ed Enough learning platform as well, where it encourages teams to be able to learn a journey together in DEI, where you can track your learning, you can comment and be able to build a community around learning so that we become on the same page. We know that everyone comes at D&I from different angles and different learning experiences. If you're a person of color, usually D&I is where you've lived your entire life. And so to be able to walk alongside people who are learning for the first time is where we want to learn and grow together as well. So I don't know, Deborah, if you wanted me to start getting into it or if you wanted to continue with the slide deck.
You can go for it.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I'm loving the chat as well. I'm glad that there are many people here who are wanting to lean into this work and lean into this process of what does it look like to be able to start with the onboarding process and how do we begin to build equity in the processes all the way from your onboarding, your interview rubric, your interview panels, hopefully they're panels, being able to decrease bias from the beginning, all the way on to how are people evaluated? Are people evaluated the same and at the same time, as well as is there evaluations for the direct report as well as supervisors all the way up to leadership? So being able to make your processes as streamlined as possible really decreases that bias or decreases people from having different experiences within the same organization. And so Cultured Enuf, we've done about, more than 100 focus groups, as well as working with different partners in the past couple of years. And we conduct focus groups as a way of collecting that data. And what we find is that usually when you ask the question, do you all receive the same onboarding process, or what did you experience in your onboarding process, or what questions were you asked in your interview, as well as what evaluations are you getting? And it's very clear when someone says, wait, I didn't get an evaluation, or I didn't know about that training. So when you start to get those questions, it's very clear that, again, you could be in the same organization and receive different treatment depending on who you know or who your close relationships are within the organization. And so we're going to get a little bit into how to standardize job descriptions, which is it's a very integral part of onboarding process. However, it is one of the keys and a good place to start to be able to create equity within the workplace as well. So we're going to get into specifically what does it look like to have culturally inclusive job descriptions and to stand out from your competitors as well. And also asking the question in the backdrop, whenever you're putting a job description together or maybe hiring for a position, really looking into, is this position or is this candidate going to be a culture fit or a culture add to your organization? Usually when we're looking at culture fits, it could be sometimes, not always, but sometimes to the detriment of the organization. When we find people who are like-minded, who are like the same hobbies or have went to the same alma mater, have the same connections and networks, usually that starts to create a homogenous network, a homogenous hiring process as well. And so that's why we kind of ask that question is, are your candidates looking to be a culture add? Will they add value? They may be different. They may have a diverse background. They may have even different way of thinking or different way of doing things. But however, that could always add value to your organization as well. Awesome. Before we dive in, just definitely putting in the chat, what job descriptions are you working on now? Would love to hear. I know that some people are reevaluating their job description process, but what job descriptions are you working on now? Are there specific positions that you're working on or that you're evaluating for as well? If you could put in the chat. Engineers, software engineers, data engineers. Yes, Chris, let's make this interactive. It's so hard when I don't see people. I'm used to seeing people. Junior developers, okay. Talent development in global business and global units, okay. Knowledge manager. Sales, okay. Implementation, development, HR, accounting. JD refresh, okay. This is good. This is really, really good. Awesome. And evaluating for JD with diverse lens. Okay, this is great. This is really, really good. Okay, so even with those jobs, I want you to have those job descriptions in mind as just we go through this so that the evaluation of that job description, you can start to either think through how you can evaluate your job descriptions that you're currently working on, or how do you make it a cadence to be able to evaluate on an annual basis as well. All right, next slide. The lowest hanging fruit in job descriptions is focusing on language, being able to make sure that they are as gender neutral as possible, and we'll get later into removing bias from your job description. But being able to focus on the language, reading them, not only reading them, but having other eyes on them to make sure that even if they're people that are not within your department, that they're able to get eyes on them as well. So a quick pointer, using a or someone instead of saying he or she, removing he or she, even if it's he or she in the job description, you're giving people options. We want to make it as gender neutral as possible so that no one is eliminated from that job description as well. And this is a not a controversial topic, but it is something to have a conversation about, because using a certain language that may rightfully reflect the culture of your organization, especially in tech. I was involved in tech startup as well, and knowing that it can be very fast paced, it can be a very competitive, wanting to get definitely either the most followers, or being able to really get into what is your competitive edge to be able to collect as many consumers as possible. However, when you are creating these job descriptions, be aware that words such as ambitious, fast-paced, competitive, usually men gravitate towards those positions, and women do not, because maybe they think that, oh, it's competitive, I probably won't even be able to. I don't do well in competitive workplaces. If it's something like sales or things of that nature, I'm not gonna apply for it. But being aware that usually these characteristics have been positive attributes for men. However, historically, when women have come up with, and this is called a double bind, when women have the same attributes as men, it is not always looked well upon. So being able to really look at the culture within your organization, even if it is fast paced, and even if it is ambitious, and even if it is competitive, what are ways in which you can reword those characteristics, so that people can not only survive within your organization, but also thrive as well. And this is how we can get a little bit creative, pull up the thesaurus, get your synonyms out, being able to reword job descriptions so that they are more attractive. And what I mean by that is there's an underlying theme behind these words: changing from determined to dedicated, or managing with developing, or you can drives results with creates meaningful change. Time to pull out the source. Yes. The words dedicated, developing, creates meaningful change have to do with the company. Let's start with the company or the supervisor being willing to develop candidates that are coming in, versus having people hit the ground running when they're coming in and there's no room for development, there's no room for wanting to develop them professionally, wanting to invest in that person, whether it's their education, whether it is their skill set, the curriculum that they receive, maybe an internship that they weren't able to do, being able to completely learn how to develop people when they come in. Now, it is on the onus of the organization, and it is on the onus and the investment of the supervisor to be able to bring those opportunities up, and for the organization to provide those opportunities as well. So it is a question that the leadership needs to ask of themselves, and it is a question that the organization needs to ask: are we willing to open up the job description and open up positions to historically underrepresented population, if we are willing to also develop them as well? And so we'll get more into that in a little bit, but really having the organization and leadership be willing to develop the people, when the candidates, once they come in, instead of assuming that they've gotten all the training and education that they need for this position. Avoiding bias in job description. And Deborah, I'm wanting to see if there's any questions in the chats as well.
We do have one question from Katie. So if our work environment truly is fast-paced with tight deadlines, when should we address that in the hiring process?
Absolutely, absolutely. Great question, Katie. When you're able to, a lot of the times companies will screen candidates, and to very well let them know what the culture is, being able to let them know that it is fast-paced. It is, we do have tight deadlines, and then also being able to address why it is fast-paced. Is it fast-paced because of the supply chain within your organization? Is that a culture fit, or is it fast-paced because, not procrastination, but being able to really look at, why is the culture fast-paced? Why are we always running on tight deadlines? So being able to really really answer why is the culture that way, and can someone who maybe is learning or who wants to be developed within this framework thrive in that environment. And this is why I say this. A lot of the time, especially in the tech industry, it is very difficult to be able to strategically and intentionally recruit underrepresented talent or historically underrepresented talent because of this exact problem. Because a lot of the environments are fast-paced, tight deadlines, being able to adjust to other people's working styles. I'm not sure how that can fit within your organization or if it is willing to fit. But a lot of times if a culture isn't willing to be malleable or change or fit with the times, you will continue to have homogenous recruitment as well. Being able to be adjustable and being able to be flexible with different people's thinking processes, working processes, being able to meet people culturally where they are at, really will benefit the organization, because it will begin to diversify how people work. What is the context in which we're processing, even when it comes to information sharing, as well as decision-making processes. When these processes are done in a very intentional way, you will find that the less quicker the processes are done, the more you're able to get contribution within that shared decision-making. And you're also able to pause, to be able to ask questions, to be able to share information, as well as to be able to make decisions based off of the community around you, which happens to be your employees. So really asking, why is it fast-paced? Is there any way that we can work around this in order to be more inclusive, especially culturally inclusive to others as well? We know that there's it could be certain personalities that thrive in that in that environment, certain cultural groups that thrive in that environment as well. So if we're not willing to look at kind of the culture and ask the questions, why do we have to be so fast-paced? Why do we have tight deadlines? Is there a way around that as well? So that's a great insight, and be as transparent as possible when you're screening people, being honest. Don't say, oh, we take our time with things, and then when they get in the door, it's kind of different. Have integrity and be honest from the get, but being able to ask, why is our culture the way it is, as well. Deborah, are there any other comments? I want to make sure that we're
none that I see, but folks, feel free to keep dropping those questions, because even if we don't get to them in the presentation, we do have a Q&A towards the end.
Got it. I do want to emphasize, Lindsay made a great comment. She says, I've heard this before, and as a woman, it did pain me to change some of those words. I understand better now. Leadership, quote unquote, came as a big one that I had the most trouble with. I don't like confirming those biases, but I guess it's better than excluding people. Absolutely. So really leaning into key words that people normally would not identify with. And this does have a lot to do with cultural intelligence, really understanding. If you're especially in Philadelphia, I'm in Philly right now, we've worked with tech companies as well as healthcare industries, which are some of the main organizations that serve and have consumers of Black and Brown community, people of color that they serve, people of color that they provide a service to or that they're trying to reach. However, you start to see a very, very disconnect, a very large disconnect when the people you serve or the community that you are serving does not reflect within your organization or your leadership. And so being able to do the research, what are the cultures that are around you? If you want to do a 5-10 mile radius of who's around you, learning those cultures, being able to even have close proximity. Are you going to the corner store if you're in Philly? Are you picking up that cheesesteak at another spot rather than the one that you normally go to? Are you having conversations with people who are different from you, even socioeconomically different from you? So being able to expose yourself in different communities and different cultures, you'll start to be able to see how they see even job descriptions that they're saying, oh, that I don't have that. I'm not from that school, or I don't have that internship background. There's no way that I'm going to be able to apply for this position. So really, personally, what does D&I mean to you personally, where you can start to put yourself in different culturally contexts, so that you can start to see things through other people's eyes, and you'll have a better way of being able to be creative about the wording that you use for your job descriptions, so that it can be more culturally inclusive as well. How to avoid bias. So if you've been in this talk, D&I with job descriptions, I'm sure you've heard all of these, but let's reiterate so that we can get on the same page. And then I have a poll to do in a couple of other slides. Removing bias, and so knowing the different biases helps with that. Socioeconomic bias was one of the things that I mentioned, and a part of that is having a very high profile or highly advanced degrees on the job descriptions. Again, this is something that, again, is a conversation, not controversial, but definitely conversation, because the argument very well is, well, we don't want anyone who is not educationally trained in this way. I don't think someone without a college degree is going to fit or make it in our organization. And that is a valid and very large assumption that a lot of high level, either it's tech or the health industry, have, because it could be very well a niche or industry. But our rebuttal to that is that many of the colleges or the universities with that tech background or that tech department or that tech degree either are not as accessible to underrepresented talent within the tech community. So it's going to be the same conversation. What is that network within that university? Is that university that we are strategically recruiting with? Why is it still homogenous? Why is that pipeline still looking the same? Really looking at the universities, what they are doing to be able to strategically diversify their tech department as well. And so it becomes a question of pipeline. It becomes a question of where are you starting your recruitment. It also becomes a question of are the high profile universities that we look for or the curriculum that we look for. Look at that. Look at what you're looking for and being able to analyze and see what are they doing to actually diversify their recruitment. What strategies do they have? Because if there is none in place, I promise you, and history has shown us, that if strategies are not done intentionally, by default, you will get homogenous candidates. History has shown us that, the tech industry has shown us that. So unless we change up the game, unless we change up and be intentional about what the wording we use, what requirements we have, we'll continue to get the same candidates as well. So being aware of the socioeconomic bias. And also, I just want to say from a woman of color from Philly, the inner city of Philly, being in urban communities, we usually don't get, and I grew up in North Philly, we usually don't get either universities or tech companies that are wanting to invest or wanting to have a presence in our communities. There's a reason behind that. There's all about the disinvestment of the market and things of that nature. But if you really think about urban communities where there is high talents, where there is assets, usually companies are not interested for various reasons. And so therefore there's almost a disconnect in the pipeline. If I go to Center City, downtown Fishtown area, there's a plethora of opportunities where I could look at, but really looking at who has access to those communities, who's being intentional about really reflecting the people in the communities that you want to serve, and also the people in the communities that you want to reflect as well. All right, gender bias. For those of you know, even in the tech industry, there's a lot of gender bias going on, especially with the engineering industry and programming. A lot of the times it is hostile environments for women, especially. So even thinking through that and being aware of that, you want to make your job descriptions as welcoming as possible to all genders, like we mentioned. It is wanting to put it on your radar to not create job descriptions in silos. what I mean by that is to really understand your audience, understand who is going to be most attractive to this job description, who have we had historically in this position, why is that easy to recruit in that way, but then also how do we want to change the game, and how do we want to recruit people of different backgrounds, different thought processes, even the way in which they work differently. So being able to really understand that a lot of the tech companies, a lot of programming, coding, have not always been the most attractive to women. Not that we do not have the skills, and not that we do not have the desire or passion, but that environments have not always been that welcoming in those environments. So when writing those job descriptions, be aware. Maybe we highly encourage women within this job description, being able to be very clear of gender neutral roles, as well as wanting maybe to change the candidate of historically who would most likely be able to be in that role as well. Gender and racial bias. So this talks about the intersectionality of gender bias and racial bias. So it's mainly for women of color. Not only maybe you may be a woman, but also you're a woman of color. So there's an intersectionality of that as well. And there's a distinct stat that if you're in an entry level position, there's probably more people of color than when you get up to the C-suite level or the leadership. And we've worked with organizations where leaders have prided themselves on, oh my goodness, we have such a diverse workplace. It's everywhere. It's in our conversations, it's in our marketing, things of that nature. However, when I pull up your website and I see a board that is all white men, or when I see a leadership in a C-suite that is all white women or men, then there's a disconnect that we have to acknowledge. Being able to look at the gender and the racial bias within your job descriptions, but also looking at the pipeline of what it is to have an entry level, but also mid-level, and what does it look like to work up to the C-suite if it is desired? Is that accessible, and is that opportunity present as well? All right, in this poll, in the last job description that you're either working on currently or the one that you just put out on the website to be collecting candidates, what is the highlighted requirement of that specific job description? So we can have the poll up with all the options. It could be a seniority requirement that this person must come from the organization because we want to keep in-house leadership. It could be a technical skill. Do they have to have a college or master's requirement? And a lot of the times these requirements are non-negotiable. Like, we're not looking at it. We're not looking at this resume until it meets this requirement. So being able to say, is there an internship, an incubator that you need to have gone through in order to be able to be a part of this, in order to be hired or even apply to this job? All right. And the results of that. Okay, got it. Okay, this is great. 38% seniority, technical skills, including the words fast-paced. Awesome. Okay, good. And can someone put in the chat, whoever put seniority, can you explain why? Maybe a quick two-liner. Why is that a requirement for your organization?
So we're getting some comments in the Q&A. Trina wrote, "We are too fast-paced to train." as a comment. And I also have a question for you too.
Too fast paced. Yep, absolutely. Someone wrote director level role that requires 8 years. They need to have been through circumstances to help start up and expand. We've listed, another person listed experience level before, using it as a proxy for ability to do the work without training. Okay, got it.
We also got a question. Is there a way to write jobs that can dispel imposter syndrome?
I would love for that person to unmute themselves to explain if they're willing.
If you guys would like to unmute yourself, simply raise your hand and we can allow you to talk if you want to add on or, create your own comments. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yay.
Feel free to unmute yourself.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, good. Glad someone's in the room.
So ironically, I'm actually going through it now. I'm in a director level role for the first time, and through therapy, coming to realize like I have imposter syndrome myself. But a large part of this is working with other colleagues and networking connections where they want to take that next step in their career and they're reviewing job descriptions and they're feeling like they're not qualified to make that next step for one reason or another. So my wheels started spinning and I was like, is there a way to write job descriptions that are more inclusive and can be more encouraging to those that may be dealing with imposter syndrome?
Absolutely. And thank you for your transparency with that. I'm so glad that I asked you to explain it because it gives context to what you're asking. That is very true. And I have worked many jobs as well in the DC area, from Philly going to DC. And job descriptions can be very intimidating if you feel like you have to have all your ish together before you arrive, as well as if there is no opportunity to be developed. And what I mean by that, that can look very differently depending on the culture that your organization has, or even the resources that your organization has. And so being able to even list within your job description, what are resources that are available for a person that wants the job, can do the task, is results driven, can work in your environment. However, there is that imposter syndrome at times to get that loop. So if I saw a list of resources that were available to me, whether it's affinity groups for people of color, or whether it is that all staff do a set of training every year to get to where they are and meet them where they are in their level of their organization. So a list of resources is profound. A lot of the times, even companies do mentorships. When you have exec levels wanting to mentor different mid-level or entry-level people to be able to work their way up in the pipeline. And so there's definitely resources that organizations provide so that people can feel supported in their job, and it also increases retention within that organization. So the amount of support that you can provide will just increase retention within your workplace. But that's a very, very good point, and that's very accurate for others, especially who are either new to the industry or new to the company or new to the city as well. Being able to allow a list of resources so that they feel that they will be supported within their role as well. Great point. And thank you for sharing as well. All right. Reduce requirements to must or haves. Again, historically, the more requirements that you list, fewer female applicants or responses are unlikely to apply. If I have to have a degree from a certain school, have to have a certain curriculum, I mean, it becomes the more requirements that you have. And again, fine tooth comb, because I understand that there are requirements that you need within your organization, However, really evaluate what is needed and what is not. And know that whenever you put a requirement, it is going to be a barrier to entry. And we know that we don't want just anyone applying to your organization as well. You do want to set a standard. I understand that. However, be aware that when you do, the more requirements that you have, the more barriers to entry, or more barriers for candidates to apply as well. All right, replace requirements with results. And so I love this statement, is that job requirements that focus on tasks and impact what the role does, rather than on what the ideal candidate should look like, prevents confusion and helps the talent self-select. So to Kaylee, I hope I'm saying your name right, to Kaylee's point, if I know I can do the job, if it is a job description that tells me what results I need to produce within my first 6 months there. What results do I need to produce within my first year, my first 3 years there? What is expected of me? That is a much more, I guess, I want to say more willing to apply to that job description, because it is results driven. But if you're telling me that I have to have gone through a certain incubator, that I have to have gone through a certain technical school, that is going to be more of what I should look like, or what I should have done within my education and with my training, rather than the results that I know for a fact that I can produce. And this also helps down the line when you start to streamline your processes. When you have a results-driven job description, it can exactly align with your job evaluations. If those do not match up, it could be like, okay, we have a problem here because you're not meeting expectations. You were communicated what your results should be in your onboarding. However, where's the gap? Where can we best support you and set you up for success, so that your evaluations are also reflecting that the work that you could do. So being able to have job descriptions that are results driven really shifts the mindset of, we know you can do this work. We want you to do this work. However, this is the work that you need to produce. And so really it also holds you accountable as well. It holds the supervisor accountable as well as the candidate accountable. These are the results that are expected of you. So how can we get you there, instead of what your education background is, instead of the city that you come from or the sport that you play, being able to really remove those personal or professional criteria and say, what can you produce for this company as well?
I just want to point out a comment by Christine that says, we include year one deliverables, though I do think the word we word it can be intimidating to some. Do you have any recommendations for the wording of that?
Yes, we include 1 year deliverables, though I do think, I'm just rereading it. I do think the way we could word it could be intimidating to some. I'm going to the thesaurus. I love it. Yeah, so even when you include 1 year deliverables, my question is, are they going to be supported to complete that? And also, do they have all the resources that they need to complete those deliverables? Or is it solely expected of them to come in and hit the ground running? And I know that was someone's point, is that if you're in an environment where you are expected to hit the ground running, I'm going to put it out there. This is usually, and we've seen this happen for organizations and companies that are either tight on time, tight on money. What happens is it becomes detrimental and unhealthy to your hiring processes, because you're at a time crunch, your resources are tight. Therefore, you might hire anyone who can fit that rubric, although it is still working within the homogeneous network that you currently have. What I'm saying is that when it is fast paced, or when you have to hire on the dime, when you need someone really quickly, I understand that. I understand the concept and the reality of that. However, just be aware that it prevents you from being intentional in your hiring, and it prevents you from being strategic in your hiring as well. So just know the cost of what it is to hire fast. It's more of a reactionary process, when it should be very deliberate, and when it also should be very intentional and strategic as well, especially when we want to attract underrepresented talent. at the same time. So when you have 1-year deliverables, it could be intimidating, but it also could be results driven. So someone saying, oh, I can accomplish that in a year, but this is what I may need. I may need to learn how your internal programming work, because this is what I was trained on. So are we supporting people if we're asking of them to hit the ground running with a 1-year deliverable? So those are just questions to ask. Are the resources there? Is the support there? And is it more of a conversation? This is a 1-year deliverable that we have on our job description. I know that you were aware of it. However, is this something that you think you complete, or what would you need from us to be able to complete this well? Because we really value as a candidate, we really are trying to be able to have your thought processing and your background within our organization. We believe it is a value. So what do you need from us? What resources would you need in order for for you to deliver that 1-year deliverable and that 1-year goal that we're asking of you? So making it more of a conversation, I think it will make it less intimidating when you're screening or when you're having those interview processes as well.
Amazing. And I just want to encourage folks to continue asking their questions. We do have questions in the Q&A and in the chats, but we'll wait until the end to answer them all at once. So please continue to send them our way.
Awesome. Other considerations, and then well, I have 2 questions for you all as well to land it. Considering indicating a salary range, I know that this could be tricky for organizations because in the negotiation is kind of where you can either lowball it or you can offer someone depending on what their criteria is. And this is full of biases. I'm just going to say it. It can be full of biases when you are able to control how much someone gets paid. And if you know they come from a certain background, if you know maybe they are not privy to your company, maybe they have not researched it on glassdoor.com. People, when they do not present the salary range or they're not transparent about it, being able to have that transparency, even if it is a large range, having the large range on there puts value to your position and the value that you're looking for, the talent that you're looking for. But also a range will give room for growth, will give room for development, and will give room for negotiation. And so consider that it is a step of transparency for most organizations and most leadership. But being able to list salary ranges, and again, it's a legal requirement in some states. Thank you, Alberta, for mentioning that. To be able to be as transparent as possible in those conversations. Emphasizing your company's commitment to DEI. We have seen, and I'm not going to lie to you, when organizations copy and paste a quick paragraph, shove it in their job description, and say, this is our job description. And then in the left-hand corner, fine print, this is our commitment to DEI. I find it hilarious. But we do ask you to emphasize it and embed it within your job description. We ask you to embed it in all documents if you can. However, do not do that if it is not in your mission, vision, value statement. Because if I'm a person of color, I'm excited when I see anything DEI. Okay, they're about it. We're gonna do this thing. They get it. However, if I go to your website and I don't see, and I like search the word diversity or look at the pictures or even look at the leadership, and I don't see anything reflected, it's gonna be okay. Either they're in their beginning stages, and they're working their way towards DEI. So being able to emphasize that, we want you to emphasize it in your job descriptions because it speaks to the commitment. However, make sure that the foundation work is done, or it's being done, or it's in the works, to be able to include it in all of your documents. The way we do our assessments is that we do evaluate organizational documents, and we do emphasize that it become a value within your organization. It becomes a part of your mission, vision statement, job description, hiring rubric, to be culturally inclusive within an organization. as well as how does someone even create a culture of belonging. And I know you've had workshops in that, but how do we begin to use this language, not only in our job description, so it could be a hook for people, but also how do we follow it through in all of our foundational documents as well? So just something to be aware of and think about. Inclusive benefits. And so people will skip the job descriptions, go right down to the salary and what are the benefits that I'm going to get from your company. And so being able to have in benefits that are outside of the box. And I know that maybe you can't control that, but definitely being able to start the conversation within your organizations of what it is to have a paid parental leave, flexible work arrangements depending on someone's season of life. What does it have to have childcare subsidies, or also what does your cultural calendar look like? As a person of color, or even an underrepresented talent within your organization, is there anything that is going to help me thrive? And then is there anything that is going to be able to make me feel represented within this organization? So there's something to be aware of, that people are searching for more benefits. And unfortunately, the workplace is no longer a place where you can clock in, clock out. If you ever look at Amy Edmondson's Harvard research that she does on psychological safety in the workplace, really being able to look at what does it mean to create psychological safety so people can bring their full selves to work. And that starts with the job description of being able to see, okay, I can work for this company, or I can work for this company. I have options. What is a company that is going to meet me where I am culturally, but also really be able to care for me as an individual at the same time? All right. Quick question, and maybe you feel comfortable putting this in the chat. Maybe you feel comfortable unmuting yourself or raising your hand. Have you ever read a job description? I'm very curious, actually, to see. Have you ever read a job description that reminded you of a past toxic workplace? A past toxic workplace. And absolutely, what I could mean by that is, this is where you would see job descriptions and you would not even pay it any attention, because it reminds you of where you came from, or reminds you of a not so good experience that you've had. And even when it comes to the job description, even a company website, I'll be transparent as a woman of color. I have worked in predominantly white spaces while I was in DC, and I not only looked at the job description, I found out who was going to be my supervisor. And if my supervisor was going to be a white male, I tread it very lightly, as well as being able to be who is on the website, who is going to be, I'm going to be frank. As a woman of color, I am looking for either someone that will hear me, someone that will value what I have to say, because I have been in environments where I have been ignored. I've had an idea and someone took it from me, or I have not been invited to meetings. And I don't say this to have a pity party, but I say this because these are real life workspace examples that happen when you are looking for it. And so want you to be aware that people are looking through this lens and comparing it to what their past workplace experiences have. And if your job description is not welcoming, if your job description doesn't make sure that I will be supported or I will be able to thrive within your organization, you may find yourself getting the same candidates as well. And so that leads to my next question is, have you had a job description that keeps attracting homogenous candidates? Have you had a job description that keeps attracting homogenous candidates? We are family. I love it. Someone said family and fast pace stress me out. Oh, that's hilarious. That's correct. Family is a job description. That is hilarious. That would also make me nervous, Chris, if it said we are family. Okay. Someone said previously worked at the Fed sector, USAID client requirements. Yep. Okay, kept requiring PhD or master's with 15 years worth of experience. Resulted in lack of diversity. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly, for sharing. And the amount of reports that we have done within our company, we've seen the intentional pushback of what it is to have a culturally inclusive job description, a culturally inclusive work environment, if you will, conducting many focus groups and coaching leaders, CEOs, HR on this. There could be, and I want you again, be aware of being able to see with these eyes, is that there are many times where cultures within the organization are actually put in place to preserve what is there and to preserve either homogenous culture or to preserve the homogenous leadership that is in place. So while you are thinking through the lens of the frustration of why is it can't we get this, or why can't we break through this group, I want you to know that the talent is there. I've been in focus groups where it's like, I don't know where the talent is. It's just not, is this there? But then also being aware of, even if the talent were to enter your company, even if you had the right job description, you got the right candidate, even if that person that is of a different background is new to the organization and maybe the only one or maybe the one of two, will that person thrive in that organization? And looking at the culture where your organization sits, is the culture there to welcome and to support and to help thrive and to help innovate and to help bridge that gap of what it means to have a diversity of thought and knowledge? Or is the culture that is set, are the structures in place to actually preserve what is there? And that has everything to do with the job description. And it kind of starts with that, with what your website looks like, what your job description reflects. So being very well aware of, is your culture preserving what is there, or is there a culture of invitation where it does have people, candidates who think and just vibe differently, but will produce results, and actually may produce better and different results as a product of having diversity within your workplace. So just some thought processes, just some practical takeaways. If you are a hiring manager, which I saw a lot in the chat in the beginning, consider screening your qualifications. What skills, know what is absolutely non-negotiable, and also what is negotiable, and really leaning in to that as well. And then also, what is the development that is happening to support your candidates as well. And then also, when you're able to hire when you're able to be proactive and not so reactive. We're in a time crunch, we have to hire right away, we have to hire or this won't get done. Again, what I said earlier is that prevents from being as intentional and strategic as possible. But when you are able to be proactive about evaluating all of the job description within your company, when you are able to be proactive about evaluating all the evaluations and making sure they match up with those job descriptions, making sure that the same people are being evaluated that need to be evaluated, as well as making sure that the job descriptions are fitting what your criteria is of equality, being able to evaluate on an annual basis prevents bias from happening as much as possible. So again, a lot of the times, creating a rubric for yourself of what it is to have equality. I know we have hiring rubrics on our EdEnuf platform that if you email me, we can definitely have a chat to make that available to you, so that from the hiring and the onboarding process all the way to the evaluations, being able to have that streamlined so that they are keeping the job description and the evaluation accountable at the same time, and making sure that that's communicated across the board. you will receive a worksheet, and it has this content in a PDF form that you can use. And I also think it has questions to process. What are you working on currently? What would you like to see fixed? What would you like to see improved? And do you need to ask for more time and resources from your supervisor in order to make sure these processes are in place and make sure the strategy is in place, as well to diversify your recruitment at the same time?
Great. So oh, sorry about that. We're towards the end, but if you have any questions, please let us know. We do have one question in the Q&A queue. Can you provide sample job descriptions of how result-driven descriptions would look like?
Absolutely, absolutely. We've seen it where there are numeric examples to be able to produce. So depending on industry, depending on sales, I know that sales and marketing, if someone can increase a part of their product or the selling of their product in a time frame, that is results driven. And that means that if I can accomplish this goal, again, with the conversation that we had prior to, if there's resources in place to do so, if I feel equipped and I feel like I can thrive within that organization and within that job description, keeping things also numeric, but also providing the support to do that, if that makes sense. So being able to provide, if they need the training, if they need any resources that were from their predecessor that left the organization, being able to close that gap. I don't know if you've ever been a part of a job where you've had a goal to meet right when you started, and then also there was no communication between the predecessor. No one bridged that gap for you. So you kind of have to like figure it out on your own, and you have to bootstrap it, and you have to get creative. I've definitely been thrown in those positions, which have not been the most likely. But being able to have numbers, or to be able to have even as leadership, how do you measure leadership? Being able to have a results driven with how many people are you going to be expected to lead, and these are the evaluations that are going to be asked of you, and this is how you will be evaluated. So really the job description should also reflect the evaluation that they will have either on a quarterly or an annual basis. But depending on the industry, depending on whether it's sales or marketing or programming, how many software programs do I need to create within this time frame? Okay, if I need to do that, what are you going to provide to me as a company? I'm going to hit the ground running, but at the same time, can you close the gap between who did it before me and how they did it, so that I can fit the culture well, but also I can also add the talent and the skill that I'm coming from my other work as well. So being able to have the conversation of this is what is expected of you, and this is exactly what you will also be evaluated on, and also this is how we're going to support you in that work as well. Great
Thank
question.
you so much. Yeah. We are pretty much at the end of our time. We learned so much during this past hour, and I know that everybody has so many questions. So if you take a look at your screen, you're more than welcome to connect on LinkedIn.